Can you hypnotize yourself so that you can do the thing you have to do, but you kind of don't want to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Self-hypnosis is 100% a thing. Yeah, it's easy to do. Yeah, it's incredibly easy to do once you figure it out. Takes a minute to kind of like program a trigger for yourself. But yeah, you can drop yourself in. See, there's amazing things you can do with hypnosis. There really are. But they're not talked about nearly enough. 99% of what we're doing in terms of all this like mental health and self-improvement stuff is like, I just want to feel better. I don't want to feel this way. I want to feel better. And I don't care what I have to do it. And that comes to, I've started to think about this as kind of like the original sin of mental health, this idea that emotions are pain in the first place. The idea that emotions are pain, they come from emotional wounds, they're caused by emotional traumas, right? And when you're defining negative emotion that way, a lot of stuff happens. First of all,
Ryan Christensen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Ryan, you are a professional hypnotist. Can you please explain what hypnotism is exactly? Because I'm sure many people, including myself, only know the hypnotism we see in the movies and, from Hollywood, which is sort of a magician, so to say. So what hypnotism really is?
Sure. So fundamentally, you've got kind of like basically two parts of your mind. There's your conscious mind. That's kind of like the party is sort of like watching things play out, kind of the party that's really responsible for thinking, kind of the forward planning part. And you've got what you call the unconscious mind or the subconscious mind. Mm-hmm. That's the rest of your brain that's like basically handling all the doing of stuff, right? If you decide to go get groceries, like your conscious mind, that job is done. Magic happens. You get up off the couch, hop in your car, drive to the store, get your stuff, coming back, sit back down, like didn't really have to think about or do many decisions after that, right? So that part of your mind is really running like 95% of what's going on. But we can't really access it on ourselves, right? Can't really access it directly. So hypnosis is a set of techniques that allows us to get direct access or more direct access to your subconscious mind, kind of lets us open up that door in the wall. And that's done through a number of different techniques. Sometimes it's like a progressive relaxation. Sometimes it's like a sort of compliance ladder. There's all kinds of like different techniques and tools that we call inductions to kind of lead you down to that space. It's a voluntary process, right? I can't make you do anything. You have to allow me to lead you through that process. It's kind of like deciding to take a dance, right? If you don't want me to lead you, I can't take you there, right? So a lot of stuff you see like in movies, that's just kind of like a plot device they use. So you can have the mind control thing. And all the entertainment stuff you see on stage is very much a situation where people have decided to play the game.
I see.
They know they're going to get up on stage. They know they're going to do something stupid, right? They know they're going to look like an idiot, right? And the hypnotist is really kind of like testing the audience, kind of throwing a bunch of stuff out there to see who's responding, inviting those people up on stage, testing them to some more to see, okay, these are the people that really want to play the game. These are people who are really committed to looking like an idiot. These are the people I'll play with, right? So no, I'm not going to make you cluck like a chicken. I think that's stupid and boring. You'll have to pay me extra for
that. No, that's fair. That's fair. So if you don't want to get hypnotized, you cannot get hypnotized.
Nope.
All right. So even though could you be not aware that you're being hypnotized? So let's say if you know that hypnotization is getting place and you don't want to hypnotize, obviously no. But what if you're not aware of it? Could it be possible?
Well, I've not seen that happen. Are there sneaky ways you could do it? There probably are. It's not something I study. It's not something I do. And pretty much anybody who's doing that is an unethical kind of person anyway. So they're going to be doing all kinds of tricky, shady stuff. I don't know that you'd be able to get somebody in hypnotic trance that way. There's a lot of persuasive stuff you could do. If you got like this idea of like neuro-linguistic programming, it's kind of like hypnosis light, if that makes sense. That kind of stuff people can play with all the time, and it's a little bit manipulative. But I don't think you can actually get somebody into hypnotic trance against their will if they don't actually want to play the game, because you have to lead them into that state, right? It's a pretty deliberate process.
Because what I was thinking is, okay, let's take it to another level, is hypnotizing people to a grand scale. For example, during COVID, mainstream media were extremely coordinated to pass a certain narrative into the population, and they were very effective in instilling fear and panic into all of us. And perhaps that is not really being hypnotized. But in a way, it feels like a mass-scale hypnotization, putting everyone in this state, in this emotional, I guess, subconscious state of fear, panic, or whatever the emotions are.
Yeah. So what I would say is, like, number one, that's not hypnosis. It's not.
It's not hypnosis.
It's not hypnosis. No. If you're watching a movie, right? There's a willing suspension of disbelief, right? Where for a period of time, you're just like, you're going to go along with the show, right? You're going to accept the premises and go along the show because you're enjoying the ride, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people have that same suspension of disbelief when they're watching the news, right? That's supposed to be truth, right? And if everybody's saying the same thing, if all these authoritative spaces that are supposed to be truth is giving you the same message, odds are you're going to accept it, right? That's not necessarily hypnosis. That's just propaganda on steroids. That's all that is, right? And the other thing is like, you know, you've got this idea of like mirror neurons, right? There's kind of like the part of our brain that's kind of like watching what's going on around us, seeing how people react, and kind of like deriving meaning from it, right? Well, if all the signals you're getting from everywhere, media, your friends, family, coworkers, everything is that this is the situation, this is how things are, this is the truth, it's really hard to kind of come up to any other conclusion, right? Because every signal you're getting is the same, right? So the odds that you're going to draw that conclusion that they want you to is really, really high, right? And that's why that sort of pervasive media environment was so, man, oppressive in a lot of ways, right? Because if you're like, there's something off about that, man, you just got smacked down hard, right? Yeah. And so there's a lot of dynamics at play with that were massive pressure tactics and massive like information environment control tactics that led everybody to a state where like, yeah, there's kind of only one answer to really play with, but that's not hypnosis. That's just information control propaganda.
I understand. When it comes to a more scientific understanding, do we know what's happening in the brain during a hypnotic state? Is that how you say hypnotic?
I guess hypnotic state. Yeah.
During a hypnotic state, has anyone studied this?
Oh yeah, they've been studying this for well over 100 years. You know, Stanford, Princeton both have big departments in the psychology departments to study hypnosis. They put people in like functional MRI scanners while they're doing hypnosis tests and stuff like that. We have a pretty good idea of all kinds of things that happen with when you're in hypnosis in terms of like scientific things. Like your default mode network gets turned down right there. Your brain starts to connect and talk to each other. You know, different parts talk to each other in different ways. If you're talking brainwave frequencies, there's like a beta, theta entrainment. Like, so you got beta is your waking state. Alpha is kind of meditative. Theta is that kind of bridge between your waking and your sleeping state. That's where hypnosis happens. And delta is sleep. So you get this like beta, theta entrainment where you're kind of talking across the conscious and the unconscious, which is kind of like how we bridge down. A lot of really cool stuff you can do with it. And there's like a lot of studies on how it works and the impact and all kinds of things. Yeah. It creates neuroplasticity, right? So you can do all kinds of like really big change work, which is one of the biggest things that I love about it is how big of a change you can make so quickly. But yeah, studied by scientists all the time. They actually teach it in like clinical psychology classes and stuff like that. So,
okay, so if it is such a powerful technique, why is it shoved off in a fringe area in society? You know, I guess many people have misconceptions about it. Many people regard it as a wishy-washy thing that doesn't exist. So if we have studied this and it is so much effective, why is it not making its way into more popular or, you know, mainstream therapy or more mainstream, maybe just self-improvement? Why are we not talking about hypnosis so much?
That's a really good question. So one of my mentors actually started out as a psychologist and became a hypnotist later on. And, you know, he's practicing way back in the day. He said, you know, people go to a hypnotist because they can't find which doctor in the phone book. And these days they can, right? Because you got that whole psychedelic space, which is now in play. But fundamentally, it's a situation where hypnotism really kind of got started back in like, I think it was 1800s or so with like Anton Mesmer. And he's all about like, you know, I'm going to take control of your mind, and like kind of a freaky guy, kind of like students who seduce women, kind of had that bad reputation from the start. And they were coming up at the same time you had like mainstream psychology with Jung and Freud and everybody else. And that was a much more like scientific perspective, right? There's a particular framework. We have this particular explanations of why things are. And hypnosis has always been like, hey, we're going to get down there, we're going to play around, and we don't really care what the framework is, right? It's also mostly about suggestion and persuasion. It's kind of how we frame things for the most part. Okay. Where I'm going to open the door and I'm going to throw a bunch of good stuff in, right? I'm going to tell you how awesome you are. I'm going to tell you, oh, like you don't like this food. You don't like smoking cigarettes anymore. And that can be incredibly effective, right? It's one of the most effective tools for smoking cessation, you know, quitting smoking, to the point where the American Lung Association actually has a list of hypnotists on their website for smoking. Nice. Yeah, you can get someone to stop smoking in a single session, right? Pain control, phenomenal for pain control, right? My mentor used to have migraines, right? And if you know anything about migraines, there's just like nothing you can do, just suffer, right? But she's a hypnotist. So when she was getting migraines, she just pop in the back of her head, drop in a trance, and there's a dial in the back of her head that says pain. She just turn it down from 8 to 3 and go back about her day, right? So there's amazing things you can do with hypnosis. There really are. But they're not talked about nearly enough, right? And because it's based on suggestion and persuasion, it's not the most reliable, okay? Because you have to accept the suggestion. It can take a lot of reinforcement. And so there's major limits to like what you can really change, right? Really good about changing perceptions, really good about changing the way we process information, really good at kind of like creating new opportunities, really bad at fixing stuff, okay? It says the typical approach is understanding things on a rational level, understanding things on a thinking level, and not on that deeper subconscious level. We don't really want to go down there and play, right? We don't really have any control down there. Don't really have a lot of visibility. It's kind of like that dark space is like you got your conscious frameworks, you got your neurochemistry where biohackers play, and you kind of ignore the middle stuff, right? Because you don't really have any reliable access to it. So the way I kind of go about it is a little bit different, right? My background is in intelligence work, working for the military, working as a contractor, doing like counterterrorism, counterproliferation. So my job for like 23 years was figuring out stuff that people didn't want me to know. And if I've got access to the back of your head where all the information is, why am I guessing?
Yeah.
Show me the answer. Like, you're doing stuff on purpose. Great. Show me. Right. Because then we can explore the chain of logic like you would in like a therapy session, but do it like on that level where things are actually being run, disprove it on that level, create a new belief set on that level. So now there's no competition between the new and the old. There's just the new. And man, you can make such huge strides so quickly just by approaching the technique in a different way.
And are these intelligence agencies actively using hypnosis, or is it something do they have better techniques or things to, get what they want?
That was not the space I played in. So I can either confirm or deny any such involvement in activities or knowledge of, and yada, yada, yada.
Such an intelligence guy thing to say.
There's a reason we do it. There's a reason we say that.
All right. So have you personally received any criticism for being a hypnotist? I would assume, again, coming from a very third world, closed-minded society, that if you come and you tell to my mother I'm a hypnotist, he'll be either one, you crazy, two, you are crazy, or three, is just what's wrong with you. So it's not not a profession, it doesn't exist. So have you received any sort of this fringe, not behavior treatment, let's say, for doing what you do?
Well, I would say that everybody asks me, so what do you do for a living? It's like, well, I'm a hypnotist and author. I'm like, you're a what? It's like, we've never heard that before. It's like, yes, I know. Like, nobody's like, you hypnotist, what? Yeah. And it's not really seen as, you're right, it's not really seen as a particularly prestigious or respected position and profession, right? Most of the people go to what? The stage magic stuff, right? The entertainment stuff. It's like, no, I don't do that stuff. It's like play with people's heads for a purpose, right? But you see it a lot in like California, right? You see it a lot in kind of like the higher end, like entertainment businesses, stuff like that. A lot of celebrities like to go to hypnotists because, they've been down the therapy road for a while and like they're looking for that next big thing. And this is kind of like the next thing, right? And so it's very much a situation where as the world is kind of like becoming more aware of and looking into more alternative treatment methodologies and more tools and techniques to kind of like do that deeper change work, it's becoming more and more, I wouldn't say well respected, but becoming more well known as an option, right? The other thing is that the quality control in the hypnosis space is like not the best. Like you can get certified. My initial certification was like 100 hours in 6 weeks, right? And that's not a lot of training,
nothing,
right?
Yeah,
not really. And the thing is, like, learning how to hypnotize somebody is easy. You can learn how to hypnotize somebody in like an hour. It's really, oh man, it's frighteningly easy. Again, if they're willing to let you lead them through it, easiest thing in the world. What you do when you're down there, that's the magic, right? And there's all billion different theories about why things work the way they do down there. Most of them like contradict each other. And so it's really kind of like about finding and creating a tool set that actually lets you leverage, kind of like your unique built-in talents, right? Which is why I kind of use this the way I do, because like I'm an autistic guy that's been in intelligence for 23 years. Like, I'm just going to go looking around, right? I'm not going to tell stories about how awesome you are because I don't have to do that. Tell me why you're not awesome and we'll fix that, right?
Right. No, that's a good use. Okay, let's say someone has hypnotized you and you are in that state, you went there willingly. Can they really manipulate you once, you are under the spell, so to say?
Well, again, it's all voluntary, right? And your subconscious mind is still you, right? It's the deepest part of you, which is where like your moral compass is and your ethics are, and like your deepest sense of self is. And we're putting that more in control, right? And that part of your mind's primary focus or primary job is your survival. So why the hell would it let me mess with you in a way that's actually going to mess with you, right? If you're up on stage doing stupid stuff, yes. Why? Because you decided to play the game. Trying to create a situation where I can manipulate you into a situation of doing something you don't want to do that's against your best interest. Like that's really, really hard. Right.
I see.
There's been some situations where I remember one situation I saw on like a true crime TV show where like, there's a hypnotist that was like, getting women to do stuff for him using hypnosis. But in a lot of situations, those were people who were already insecure, people pleasing, so forth and so on. They already had like a predilection or a tendency to do stuff like that. And he was just like latching onto that and then turning it to his benefit. Right. So it's really hard to do something like that against somebody's will. Like it's really, really hard. Like you got to be in some very specific situations, have a lot of control over the person or something like that. And that's not common at all.
Right. Because I was thinking if some people are very gullible and they have this propensity to know, as you said, people please or whatever, just let go, control, perhaps, or maybe they're too weak. They've been in a terrible state of mind for a very long time, maybe under the influence of drugs. I don't know. I'm just brainstorming here. I have no idea.
Yeah. Like, and that's the sort of situation is like, it's, if you're using hypnosis as a tool for persuasion, yes, it's much more persuasive, right? So if you have somebody who is very persuadable, or is in a state where they're vulnerable, yeah, you can definitely do some stuff down there, right? But there's still limits to that, just like there is limits to any sort of persuasion, right? There's a show I watched on Netflix, I think it's called Stolen Youth, about this guy who like basically brainwashed a bunch of college kids and just like ran them through the ringer, just horrible stuff to them, right? But even the ones that were most brainwashed, as soon as you got them out of that environment, that stuff broke pretty quickly. It kind of came back to reality pretty quickly, right? So even if somebody messes with you down there, like the longevity of it, like how long it's going to last, how resilient it is to like challenge from the outside world, like that's not going to last long, right? Which is kind of like why suggestion-based stuff isn't as effective because, okay, you have a new belief system, but it's competing with your old belief system, and your old belief system has an entire lifetime of evidence for it, right? So unless you're constantly reinforcing this or really controlling your environment, this other one resorts itself pretty quickly.
I see. Nice. Okay, this might be a very stupid question, but can you hypnotize yourself so that you can do the thing you have to do, but you kind of don't want to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Self-hypnosis is 100% a thing. Yeah, it's easy to do. Yeah, it's extremely easy to do once you figure it out. Takes a minute to kind of like program a trigger for yourself. But yeah, you can drop yourself in and say, okay, like I'm gonna drop myself in. I want to come out and be productive and focus on this thing here. And you can get into that state. It's pretty easy. It's hard for me to do to myself, mostly because I'm autistic and my brain just doesn't let me play with that way. It just likes to tell me no. So it's like I can't lie to myself. So I can't lie to myself and say I'm motivated when I'm not. It's like, hey, I'm driving myself and I'm being motivated. It's like, no, you ain't. This is not what you want to do. It's like, God damn it. So it doesn't work for me. That kind of thing doesn't work for me as well as it does for like a lot of other people. But there's still a lot of things I can do with self-hypnosis in terms of like dropping in and kind of like helping myself process stuff. Like when I'm learning new things, it's really easy to kind of drop in after and let it like help it integrate faster. Some techniques around that, which I found really, really effective.
That's awesome. I know you just said you have difficult being hypnotized, but have you ever been hypnotized?
Oh, no, I have no difficulty being hypnotized. I have difficulty hypnotizing myself.
Oh, okay. I see. Yourself.
Right. So there's this interesting thing, like if you and your unconscious mind there's some friction, there's some fighting, right? Then your unconscious mind is not really going to let you play with it the way you normally would, right? Because it doesn't trust you, right? And all the changes you really want to make are to do things that it thinks are like bad or wrong or dangerous in some way. So like, why would it let you change it, right? And with the hypnotism or with the autism, like that's kind of taken to an extreme where like my mind flat out will not allow me to lie to it, right? I can't lie to myself in any way, shape or form. So I'm like, oh, I want to do this. It's like, no, not allowed. But I want you, nope, not allowed. So every time I do, like, it's so frustrating. I'm going through this process, trying to fix myself, I know exactly what the problem is, know exactly how to fix it. My mind's like, nope, not allowed. Got to hire somebody else to do it instead. I'm like, so I'd always have to hire other hypnotists to fix me, even when I knew exactly how to do the thing, exactly what's supposed to be fixed. Oh, it's so frustrating. But it was really effective, because it kind of like allowing a neutral third party to kind of come in and have that negotiation for you, right? To kind of sit down and say, okay, bring both parties to the table, negotiate some new solution. And that way you can actually get on board and on the same team together.
Nice. Well, I do lie to myself all the time. So maybe if I learn self-hypnosis, it's going to be very useful. Okay. So all these people that you coach, or maybe coaching is not the right word, that you help
work with,
all these private high performer people, that you do hypnosis sessions. That's it, to overcome, self-perceived limitations and elevate their growth to the next level. I would love for you to share some very moving or transformational success stories, and so that, the audience and even me understand how powerful really hypnosis is.
Sure. So like one of the clients I worked with, he was a guy in his early 30s making about 10, 15 million a year, is really trying to level up to 30, 40 million a year sort of thing. And it was really all about these self-imposed limitations around who he thought he was and how good he thought he was, what he deserved, right? And so it's constantly going through this process of like trying to prove to himself how good he is, right? But the problem is, your unconscious mind dresses true and false based on what you already believe. So if you believe you're not good enough, it doesn't matter how much proof you have, it's never going to change. Yes. All right. So it's a matter of getting down there and figuring out, okay, why did you feel you're not good enough? Like, where did that come from? Right. And kind of unpacking that original story. But as soon as we did that, like, he was off to races. Like, yeah, no, 100%. I can go do it. I can crush it. There's like no limits to what I can do. Don't have to do all the stuff I used to do in terms of like throwing the yacht parties and stuff like that to make him look baller and things like that. That's not necessary anymore, right? Because it doesn't have to prove to himself. It doesn't prove to anybody else. So he could just focus on doing the things he wanted and needed to go out and crush it and build the life he wanted to build, right? And that only took like 3 sessions, I think, 3 90-minute sessions. It doesn't really take very long at all. The other thing I would say is there was another client of mine who, very successful attorney, kicking butt, taking names, but he realizes like, wait a second, I am doing everything for everybody else, right? I'm doing everything for everybody else. I'm not getting what I need in return. I'm not taking care of myself. I'm not putting myself first, right? I never have, right? It's like, okay, well, that's a bad thing, because now you're successful and you don't actually get any of the benefits of being successful. You don't get to live that life. You don't get to actually enjoy it, right? It messes with everything else, your relationships and all that other stuff. So sat down and did the work for him. Similar kind of thing. It was like, okay, well, if you're not good enough, you don't deserve stuff. So why would you let yourself have it, right? And if you're always spending your time and your life trying to figure out who you need to be in order to be accepted and loved and taken care of, get what you need in your life, then you never get to be you. So it was all about exploring, okay, why were you never allowed to be you? Why did you think that you were the problem in the first place? Right. And once we got those kinds of concepts out of the way, it's like, okay, no, I was always fine to be me. I was always deserving. I was always good enough. Of course I need to let myself out the stuff that I need, right? Because I can't give to anybody else if I don't have anything in my cup. Right. So it's about filling his cup first and so forth. So I got to do much more of that focus on himself, much more rewarding life. He was actually able to level up his business and his law practice even more, because he was able to focus on, no, this is something I need to do for me, not just everyone else.
Nice. As you were saying that, I was thinking how, I'll make an assumption, you tell me if it's true. Are more successful in financial terms people more prone to want to seek hypnosis rather than the average people? And I was thinking that because once you get rid of your financial worries, then all you have to face is exactly what your clients are facing. And if they could not find this help in therapy or somewhere else, they would seek it more. Whereas the average person has to deal with, the financials and whatever of life, maybe perhaps is more in disbelief. I don't know if that makes sense.
So I find it's really, really interesting in that a lot of people who are very successful never actually go seek a lot of help to fix themselves.
Right.
And there's a reason why. Like, if you're going and you're rocking and rolling, kicking butt and taking names, getting all the money, the fame, the women, the house, the cars, everybody says you're awesome, right? Like, oh my God, you're kicking butt, you're taking names, getting all these rewards. Like, how do I get to be you? Like, I can't believe how successful you are. Why would you think you have a problem?
True.
Why would you think you had a problem, right?
Yeah.
And so it takes a very self-aware person to go like, okay, I've got the success. And like, wait a second, there's something still not right. There's a great guy. His name is Andrew Wilkinson. He's like a venture capitalist type up in Canada. He wrote a book called Never Enough. And it's his journey from being a barista, making coffee, to being a billionaire. All right. Wow. $6 an hour, billionaire. And he got there and just realized, like, wait a second, I am just as insecure and anxious as a billionaire as I did when I was first getting started. Like, and he was kind of grew up in a poor neighborhood. So it's like, okay, I just got to make a bunch of money to solve everything. Made the bunch of money. He's like, that didn't fix anything. He's looking around. It's like, wait a second, all my friends who are billionaires, same thing. Hundreds of millions, same thing. Tens of millions, same thing. This don't work that way. Right? But it takes a very powerful sense of self-awareness to say, okay, wait a second. No, there's something seriously wrong. Like, I should be getting this result and I'm not. Right? So instead of like pushing the pedal harder, I'm just going to go ahead and take a step back and take another look at things. Right? But it takes a certain self-awareness to be able to do that. And a lot of successful people are just like, there's one and only one thing I'm able to do, and that is push that number higher. Like Alex Hormozi is a perfect example of this.
Okay.
Right? Entrepreneur here in the US. He's like in his mid-30s. He and his wife have a consortium of companies that are making like $5 or $600 million.
I know him well. Yeah. Very nice.
Yeah. He keeps on talking about like how really successful people have three traits in common, right? Number one, they have a superiority complex. They've got a lot of talent. They're better than other people. They've got impulse control. They can do the right thing at the right time. Number three is the kicker. Massive sense of insecurity that they're running from.
Yeah.
Right. And it's that stick they're running from. And they got this nice shiny carrot of success. And they just are stuck in that treadmill forever. Like, oh, you're passively driven. It's like, yes, and you can't do anything else. You have no option. Right. And if you see him, he's talking about like what? Building a stack of undeniable evidence proof that he is who he says he is. Right. But if you got one piece of undeniable proof, aren't you done?
Exactly. You're content. You don't need to seek anything else.
It's like, why do you need a stack? Why does the stack need to be bigger? Right? Like you should have worked, right? But if that was going to work, it would have worked by now. But they're so locked into that one possibility, the one possible answer, that they can't take their mind out of that space to look at anything else. Normal people are actually easier more often than that because they know they've got a problem. They know stuff's not working. Right? They know they're not getting what they need in life. So it's much easier for them to say like, yeah, there's something I need to be looking at here. Right? So it's really just a matter of like, do you really have the self-awareness? Are you honest with yourself about things that are not working? Because if you've got that, then we can come and play. Right? But those are the guys who've usually started doing some work already. Been to therapy, they've done some psychedelics, they've done something before they go, okay, this isn't working enough. Now I got to look for the next option.
I love that. Nice. And what is the most common thing people, and we don't have to limit this to your practice, maybe, other hypnotists, what is the most common people think, the most common thing people want to get rid of? Do you see any pattern there?
Man, like everybody's stories kind of rhyme, though everybody's story is unique, right? And it really kind of comes down to like one of two things. I call these like two different traps. There's a cage and the treadmill, right? Cage is pretty simple to recognize. Like you're here, you should be here. There's all the stuff you want to do, all the stuff you know you can be doing, and you're just like boxed in. But like the pain and the insecurity and the fear. Just really can't take action right the way you need to. That's really easy to recognize and identify. The second one is that trap I talked about, the treadmill, right? Got the stick, got the carrot, you're running along, right? But in both of those situations, what you really want is off limits in some way, shape, or form, right? Either you can't take the shot to be successful the way you want to, or you're only doing the work thing, so the rest of your life is a mess, right? Or like you really wish you could be doing like charitable work or something bigger, but you're just stuck running this business, right? And so it's this awareness of like, there is things that are off limits to me for some reason. And I want to remove those limits. I want to get out of my own way so I can have a fuller life, a more successful life, a more meaningful life, right? And that can show up in many different ways. Procrastination, self-doubt, self-esteem issues. You can see it in like relationships that just don't work. You can see it in people who like, they work themselves like 80 hours a week. Their health sucks, right? You see it as people that are like, they've got the success and they're just not satisfied. They're figuring out like, why the heck is this the way it is? Like, what is there more to life? Like, I'm supposed to be successful and I'm supposed to feel good and I don't, right? So it's always that kind of gap between where they are and where they should be, seeing that there's more to life that are off limits and they want to get those limits out of the way.
I like it. Yeah. No, I would assume that everyone's stories would rhyme too. They would just phrase it in a different way because deep down we are more the same. We relate more to each other as humans from our pain and vulnerabilities than we do from success. So it would make sense to have these shared kind of journeys of distress and insecurity and not feeling enough.
Yeah. And fundamentally, it all kind of comes down to this idea of like, there's something wrong with me. Therefore, I'm not good enough. Therefore, I don't deserve. Like that's pretty much how that core narrative really goes for pretty much everybody who is stuck that way in life.
Right. And are there any risks in a way for accessing your subconscious mind in this way? Because I would assume, not always, but much of the time, you pay a price for like you pay a price with psychedelics sometimes, you pay a price for different alternative, ways of doing things. So is there any risk there, or at least something that we know of that can go wrong?
Well, fundamentally, like you shouldn't do this if you have schizophrenia. That can really mess somebody who has schizophrenia. One of those things like, do not take, I don't know exactly. I'm not going to try it. It's one of those things is like, you're just told at the beginning, risk. If they have schizophrenia, don't go there, right? And again,
same like psychedelics then.
Yeah, same sort of thing with psychedelics. You talk about an altered state of mind, and so if you got somebody that's got that kind of mental illness, like you just don't want to go there with that, right?
Don't mess with it. Yeah.
One of the things we're taught as a hypnotist, like if the client is already working with like a doctor or psychiatrist, you have to like sit down and coordinate care with them to make sure that what you're doing is not going to mess with what they're doing, right? And there's some different drugs and things like that can make it harder to get in trance and so forth and so on. Are there any risks? Man, it's really hard to mess you up that way because your mind has to agree. Right? I can't make you do anything. Your mind has to agree to take that on.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's difficult for me to imagine situations where your mind is going to agree to do something that is really going to mess your life up. Right? Now, is it possible when you're down there that you're going to see some stuff that is really frightening, traumatizing? Could be. Could be. Could that be a rough ride? Yep, certainly could be. Right? Especially since the work that I'm doing really kind of get down to that like core situation, like what is the truth that's driving you? Where exactly did that come from, right? But the other thing is that your mind, even in those situations, can choose like what kind of memories to show you. A whole bunch of stuff in that big box in your head. Great. Show me an example. I don't care which one it is. It doesn't have to be the worst. But if we got to go to the worst in order to understand things, then so be it, right? Some hypnotists take the idea of like, oh, you have to feel it to heal it. Right? So you got to re-experience that emotion, that pain to heal the thing. And that's okay. That's the approach you take, fair enough. In which case, you're going to feel some pretty negative stuff, and it's going to be pretty intense. I don't particularly feel that way. That's necessary. I'm talking more about the stories behind it. There's no necessity to feel anything to be able to tell a story. So it's kind of the approach. Like some are more or less rough than others, but fundamentally, your mind is going to give you whatever it feels is necessary or whatever it feels is safe for you to engage with. Whether you decide it's safe to engage with or whether you really want that knowledge is a different story. But your mind has decided this is something you have to see and something you want to see or something you need to see. Just like with psychedelics in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
Sorry. Psychedelics are going to take you on a ride. It's going to show you whatever it feels is the biggest thing you need to see right then.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a lot of stuff you've been suppressing, that could be a rough ride. If you've not done a lot of work and you've still got it carrying around a lot of heavy stuff, that could be a really rough ride, right? But it's showing you the biggest things you need to work on. So even if it is a rough ride, whether psychedelics, hypnosis, anything else, like that's the place where you need to go to make the biggest shift. That's actually your biggest problem to face right then. Whatever that happens should show you.
Right, because you need to heal from all that trauma that you had, and if you keep avoiding it, if you keep running away from it, you're not gonna heal. You need to face it, and facing it can be challenging, can be scary. But if you don't face the dragon, you're not going to get to the gold. So fundamentally, you have to face the dragon. Now, let's say someone is overcome by this fear of, you just mentioned, oh, what if there's something scary in there and I don't know how to handle it? But you know what? I'm tired of being this version of myself. So what would be your best argument as to your best case as to why would someone access their unconscious mind through hypnosis or even psychedelics? Why would they do that?
First of all, number one, nothing that's down there can hurt you any more than it already has. Right? You've already survived
I like
it.
that.
Whether you remember it or not, you recall it or not, kind of irrelevant. You've already survived it, and it can't hurt you any more than it already has. The only thing that can hurt you is the lack of knowledge of what was going on down there. That's messing up your life. Right? So you actually get hurt more by not knowing than knowing in a lot of ways. The next thing is like, when you talk about traumas and these limiting beliefs and everything else, like a lot of people say, oh, I want to feel like I'm not good enough. I'm not insecure. It's like, well, you're certainly acting insecure. It's like, well, I don't like that truth. It's like, okay, fair enough. But in order to get from point A to point B, you have to start at point A, wherever point A happens to be. So if you're not willing to go to where point A is, you can't actually get to point B. Right? So you kind of have to accept the truth of the situation, the truth and the reality of where you're starting at before you can really go anywhere else. Right? Because if you're trying to start from anywhere else, you're starting from a lie. Which that's really hard to get to the truth if you're starting from a lie. Right? Yeah. But the other thing is, it only has to be true long enough to do something with it and change it. So it doesn't actually have to be true very long. You have to accept the truth long enough to do something with it. No longer. If you're willing to do that, we can get you from point A to point B. But you got to start at point A.
And how much of who we are is simply a construct of repeated thought patterns that can be rewritten under hypnosis? How much of a past can hypnosis help us shed from this societal conditioning, so that it makes space for the newer, better version of ourselves?
Well, fundamentally, we are not our identity isn't created by repeated patterns of thought or anything like that. The thoughts you have or the thoughts you experience are the output of your unconscious mind, communicating in a certain way. The emotions, same thing, right? They're signals and tools that your mind is communicating with consciousness so that you can do your job as consciousness to kind of like walk your way through life. Decide I'm going that way. These are the things I want, kind of setting that direction, acting as the CEO of a company or like the captain of the ship, right? So it's the rest of your crew kind of telling you what's going on so you can make the decisions. So it's not, your identity isn't created by a series of thoughts. The series of thoughts are your mind telling you who you are. Now, can you change all that? Yes, absolutely. Because there are a set of beliefs about who you are and how the world works that is driving all of your behavior. And a lot of these are set very, very young. Up until like 5 or 6 or 7 years old, your rationality, your reasoning really hasn't come online the way you need it to. So everything you're doing is pretty much on an emotional reasoning level, looking at like patterns over time, stories that run through things, right? Narratives that run through things. So you're not actually looking at all these detailed stuff. It's running out a very distinctive thing. And that becomes your belief set, which again, is now truth against which everything else is being compared. So if the truth you're running on is there's something wrong with me and I'm not good enough, so I don't deserve, now you got to find a way to disprove that, right? And that's where ego comes in. Can't be me and get what I need in life. Fair enough. Who do I need to become? What version of me do I need to become? Right? Because this here can't get what it needs. This here is wrong. This thing is bad. This thing is not good enough. So I got to become something else instead. So we create an identity. We create an ego. We create a vision of who we are that allows us to get what we need in the world. But that's not the truth of who you are down below. That's not the truth of what your conscious mind is running. Right? That's running the old, I'm not good enough. There's something wrong with me. I don't deserve. Right? Which is why no matter how much you try and prove it wrong, this doesn't change. But once you fix this, now those things can come in alignment. You don't actually really need that defined identity anymore. You just get to be you, kind of your truest, most authentic self.
Wouldn't that be nice? To simply be
It's
you.
a lot of fun. It's really nice to be this way. I'll tell you what, it's amazing.
So I assume then you are this way, but when did you get to this state? How long did it take? Because I assume it took a lot of work and introspection, putting in the reps of sitting with yourself and shedding all this conditioning and all this self-talk.
It's not really, man, it's really not that hard. It's like, we think it's like, oh, I've got all this self-talk and this conditioning and stuff. It's like, no. It's like, oh, I've done this so many times, that's just locked in. It's like, no, you've done it a lot because there's a purpose for you doing it in the first place. Right? That is driven by a purpose. It's trying to achieve something great. So if there's no need for that anymore, it goes away. You don't have to decondition yourself, right? Talk a lot about like, okay, so you've got this habit of who you are. Great. It's like this 8-lane wide superhighway carved through your brain, right? Great. So it's got to take a lot of work to disassemble that and rebuild a new one, right? Makes total sense. Or you just like blow up the on-ramp and it becomes irrelevant.
Yeah.
Right? Just blow up the on-ramp. Now there's no need for that anymore, right? Did it take me a lot of work to get there? Yeah, it took me about 3-4 years of work, just doing kind of everything under the sun to get to where I'm at.
Nice.
But a lot of that was because the tools out there don't really fix you. Right? Everything helps. Everything moves a needle. Yeah. You kind of hit that 20-yard line, you kind of spinning your wheels. But because of the autism, I couldn't lie to myself and pretend that better equals fixed. Right? So I just had to keep on digging and reverse engineering and figure out what things are going on down there and actually get down to the core of what all that stuff was. And that's kind of like the work I do now. The ultimate goal is to get people to a place where their core beliefs, the underlying beliefs that they're kind of like the foundation on which they run is there's nothing wrong with me and there never was. There's nothing to heal and there never was.
Nice.
I'm good enough as I am to deserve whatever I choose and I don't have to prove it to anybody, not even myself. And to get there, we do the whole, like, there's something wrong with me, like I'm not good enough, I'm weak, I'm powerless, I don't get to have it. All that stuff kind of have to get fixed in order to get there, right? But once you do that, it's like, okay, every part of you can accept. Every mistake in the past you can make peace with.
Absolutely.
Right? And once you just accept all that, make peace with it, now you don't have to judge anymore. Now you don't have to pretend to be anybody different. Now you don't have to try to be anybody different. You're good enough as you are. Deserve whatever you choose. Why be anybody different?
Nice. And then you said something there, how all the tools out there don't treat anything. And that is such a fundamental truth. Such a fundamental truth for many people that many people need to understand, because there is so many out there that seek SSRIs, antidepressants, meditation, therapy, whatever your tool is, and they think once they get that, they will be cured, they will be ridden of this thing that haunts them. But as you just said, they're just tools. They can help you. They can push you forward. They can eliminate some of the things that are keeping you from pushing yourself forward. But eventually, fundamentally, it's all in you. And that is, if everyone starts to accept it, I think society will be such a more healthier place, because we are constantly trying to numb this feeling to get where we want to go. And what do? Drugs, alcohol, porn, this, that, whatever it is. But yeah, man, I think the world would be a
fitness,
better place.
all of it. Yeah.
And all of it. I was mentioning just the bad stuff, but yeah, even the good stuff.
100%. Yeah. And the other thing is like, yeah, you're right. Like 99% of what we're doing in terms of all this like mental health and self-improvement stuff is like, I just want to feel better. I don't want to feel this way. I want to feel better. And I don't care what I have to do it. And that comes to, I've started to think about this as kind of like the original sin of mental health, this idea that emotions are pain in the first place. The idea that emotions are pain, they come from emotional wounds, they're caused by emotional traumas, right? And when you're defining negative emotion that way, a lot of stuff happens. First of all, it triggers the survival parts of your brain, right? Because now your mind has to treat your emotional state as a threat to your physical survival, because it is, right? If you think about deaths of despair, alcoholism, drug abuse, suicide, like over 300,000 people died in 2023 in the US from that. How people felt killed 300,000 people or more just in the United States, just in 2023. Crazy. Right? So it's serious, right? Once you start defining it that way, experiencing that way, interpreting it that way, yeah, it can freaking kill you. Right? Been that way since I was 9 years old, for God's sakes, like dealt with that pretty much all my life. The other thing is, if your hand hurts, you're supposed to look at your hand, because that's the thing that's busted. You got to fix it. Where do we feel emotions? You feel them in here. Feel them in here. So this has got to be the problem. That's why we're always trying to fix ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. Feeling it here, must be here. Except you fix all this stuff and you're still the same. Fixing the wrong problem. Problem isn't this, given how I'm wired, how to navigate the world. Because those negative emotions aren't pain, they're questions. They're mind saying, I'm facing a certain kind of problem, a certain kind of challenge. I need you to help me figure this out. And once you make that shift from pain to questions, interesting thing happens. Number one, you don't have to fix yourself anymore because you're not the problem. Number two, you don't have to avoid those negative emotions. You can engage with them. Right? They don't push that same survival button anymore because there's no pain. They're just questions. Right? They're just problems you're facing. Which means that every negative thing you feel is actually a good thing because it's helping you get what you want faster in the world. Last but not least, if emotions are no longer pain, they don't come from wounds. Right?
Yeah.
Which means there's nothing to heal. So you're done healing. Like that's done. Don't even worry about that. And trauma takes on a very different thing, right? Because if there's no wounds, it's not caused by trauma, right? The problem with the idea of trauma is it means that other people control what you feel. Other people make you feel things, which means you're not even sovereign over the stuff that happens in your head, right? You're perpetually a victim forever. Right?
Yeah.
And if every trauma causes a new wound, you got to heal every wound individually until you're done. And of course, that's a lifelong journey, which means you're never healed, which means you're always broken. Just by the nature of thinking about emotions as pain in that way, right? So what is trauma? Trauma is a situation where you're faced with a challenge, couldn't find a way to win. Your mind is screaming at you at the top of its lungs for help, and you don't have an answer. But you're still breathing, which means you navigated successfully in some way, shape, or form, right? So you still found a way to win, even if it was just sit there and take it because you had no other choice, right? And once you start making that shift, man, a lot of things change. So you don't have to avoid yourself. You don't have to try and improve yourself anymore. It gets you to that place where you can actually be good enough, right? Because if you need to fix yourself, you're broken. Need to heal yourself, you're broken. Broken things ain't valuable. So how can you have healthy self-esteem if you're broken? Really can't. That's why I was trying to prove it. But if you're not broken anymore, then you can create healthy self-esteem. You can actually have value. But you have to do it in a way that doesn't have to be proven, doesn't have to be measured, because the answer to that could always be not enough if you're measuring.
Yeah, more, yeah.
Yeah. So it just becomes a choice. It just becomes a choice, but you can only have that choice after you're no longer broken, which means you got to break that idea that emotions are pain in the first place to get there.
Wow. Beautiful. And something that exacerbates these sort of mental states is a lack of the identity crisis, a lack of sense of identity. And that's what we see so many people wear their trauma as a badge of honor nowadays, that they even like, because they lack this sense of purpose, they lack this sense of identity, so they have to cling to an identity. So then they're going to cling either to whatever trash is available through mainstream, through the mainstream, whatever Hollywood things, or they're going to cling to the strongest emotions. And for many people, those strongest emotions are the traumatic ones. And now sorry, go on.
Think about it this way. If the identity you create is to help you get what you need in the world, right? Playing the victim by making your trauma your identity means you get a lot of stuff from the world. Yeah. Get a lot of sympathy, get a lot of help, get a lot of aid, get a lot of attention and affection. All I got to do is play the victim. So if that works for you, that's the road you're going to go down, right? If that's enough. And if you're heavily traumatized and you think about yourself that way, then you're a victim, which means you're not good enough, so you don't deserve much, so might as well take what you can get, right? And yeah, it's tragic. It really, really is. But if you don't feel there's any better options, if there's no other choices, if there's no other solutions, like, you take what you can get.
Exactly. Yeah, we're very easy to judge these people, how, they use this. But as you said, you use what is available. And on the short term, that consolation you get from being the victim, it feels good. And you don't think over the long term because, you're quite emotional. So you just want to feel good now.
That part of your brain, your subconscious mind, is only looking at right now. The only thing it cares about is this instantaneous moment in time. This 1 or 2 second window, right? There's this beautiful set of studies in Germany in the 1970s that prove that we become consciously aware of something about a half a second after it happens, right? So there's a part of our brain that has to take everything in, process it, interpret it, and take action during that half a second before we can get that feedback loop, right? So it's designed to basically keep you alive right now. So every solution it creates is to solve the right now problem, right? It can't take into effect second and third order effects. Can't take into effect the long-term impact. Why? Because it's not built to do that. And it's the part of you that's running 90 to 95% of your life. Of course you can think about it, but that doesn't change how you feel. Doesn't change how that part of your mind is working, right? So it's not, if you got this idea of hitting rock bottom, right? You're doing this horrible thing, you're drinking, and it's stupid, it's bad, and it's wrong. But it's not until it almost kills you that you wake up and do something different. Why? Because your coping mechanism became a threat to your survival in the short term and the now. So it made this an immediate problem, made the long-term problem an immediate problem. And that's when, okay, shoot, I got to choose a different thing. That's one of the things we do in hypnosis, get down there and actually, okay, let's go ahead and take this long-term impact and show it to you now. So you now see the trap you're in on that level, so we can create a different solution, right? But you have to create a space for that part of your mind to be able to understand long-term implications, that understand that it's okay, I'm killing you fast, killing you slow, but you're still dying, right? It's before you can actually say, okay, now that you know that you're in a trap, can we create a different solution? They're yes, please. Great. Let's find some other better way to handle this sort of thing than what you're doing right now. Because what you're doing right now is going to put you in a bad situation.
All right. This reminds me, there's a quote, maybe I'll butcher it, but it says, all of our problems now were once solutions to past issues. Like kind of how you said there, how your coping mechanism becomes, this problem. And no, that's very interesting. Sometimes it could be just this spiral of, never ending solution, problem, issue, solution, problem, issue.
Yeah. But again, if you look at things, it's okay, you've got the forest and trees perspective, right? From a rational perspective, our reasoning, rational mind care about details, individual issues, individual events, individual coping mechanisms, right? Your subconscious mind, the emotional part of your mind, is really looking at the forest, high level, right? Narratives are run through things, patterns over time, right? So it's not that you have a bunch of individual coping mechanisms. You have one problem that you're trying to solve a bunch of different ways, right? So you take away one coping mechanism, what happens? You get another one, right?
Yeah.
I stopped drinking. What do I do now? I'm going to church all the time. Just a different kind of coping mechanism. Healthier? Sure. Oh, I'm in the gym 24/7, 365. Healthier coping mechanism? Probably. Still a coping mechanism, because that original problem, that underlying problem, hasn't actually been addressed or solved, right? And that's why you kind of have to get up and play on this level, deep in your mind, to see these high level ideas of I'm just not good enough. Not I'm not good enough because my teacher says, I'm just not good enough. Why? Because there's just something wrong with me, right? Once you deal with those, they stop showing up in all these different ways. So you don't have to do a lot of this work. right? Because they're all just individual manifestations of I'm not good enough. Great. So if you're good enough, a lot of stuff goes away. And everything that's left is much easier to deal with because it's all just like, oh, I'm just making bad decisions based on the framework I have, the values I have, the knowledge I have, right? And that's easy to change.
Yeah. I'm curious, have you tried psychedelics? I don't know if you talk
yes.
about this. Okay, you have.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
being a hypnotist and trying psychedelics, has that opened you up into believing that there might be some people out there with extreme, okay, let's call it supernatural skills such as telepathy? Are you open to that idea? Do you believe that something like this exists?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Fundamentally, like, grew up Catholic, I always knew that there was more to the world than just what we can see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. Right? There just is. There always was. That was always a belief of mine. Start working with psychedelics, start getting into some of the spiritual stuff, start playing with things like energy, and things get really interesting. Because now, like, I'm having an effect on somebody that I'm feeling, and neither of us are actually doing anything. We're just imagining stuff, but I'm watching this thing happen. Right? I had an energy healing session with the lady. Like, I'm in Texas, she's in Florida. She's like 1,000 miles away, and I'm physically feeling this thing happen. And we're both describing the same process that's happening in me while she's 1,000 miles away talking to me over Zoom.
I thought these things were
that's
possible only face to face, but you can do that even online?
Yeah.
Can you do hypnosis
100%.
online as well?
Oh yeah, I've always done online. I got certified in February 2020, right before everything shut down. So I've never had a physical office. Every session I do for my clients is over Zoom.
Oh wow.
All I need, well, think about it this way. Pretty soon you're going to eyes closed, laying back, chilling in your chair, right? Why do I have to be there next to you? All you need to do is hear my voice. I got to be able to see you, to watch your reactions. But other than that, don't really need to. Oh, and by the way, if you're wearing headphones, my voice is going straight in your head, so that helps. Right, as much, right? But yeah, like once you start playing those spaces, like, no, there is 100% more to reality than just what we see, hear, touch, taste, smell. So if I can do energy stuff from a distance, then why can't I do thoughts? Right? Why aren't these things possible? It's like, sure, it's possible. Is everybody that does that telepathic? I don't know. How does it work? I don't know. Is it possible? Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, and thanks to podcasts and people like Joe Rogan who invite guests that speak about these things, is becoming more and more popular, and people are, just opening their minds to it. There was a lady recently on Rogan that she's been studying these very, very peculiar and special kids that have, claimingly telepathic abilities, and how they can have this bond with a mother that the mother can think of something and then they just write it down on the other side of the room and some insane things like this. And I'm just glad this is getting more light. This kind of things that before used to be whatever, witchcraft, stupid, fringe, whatever you want to call them. But once you start and realize how there is so much more to life than just rational explanations of human rational explanations of how the world works, man, it's wild out there. It's very fascinating.
Yeah. There's something called the telepathy tapes. I don't remember if it was a podcast or YouTube show or what it was.
I think it's the lady. It's a podcast.
Okay. Yeah. Fundamentally, like I've heard phenomenal things about that. I haven't watched that one myself. Like telepathy isn't really something I'm all that curious about. It's got enough tools to get in the back of your head anyway. I don't need to be telepathic. I just go digging. Right.
Fair enough.
So, yeah.
Fair enough.
But it's like, I've got my little place I play with, and like I've always been interested in how people work and how the minds work, and I just love digging into that. It's a supernatural thing, 100%. Do I love playing with energy stuff? Absolutely. It's something I can experience and feel, and it's fun to play with. Do I care how it works? Not really. There's something fun. Like there's a certain amount of like, I'm gonna let my magic stuff be magic.
Yeah.
Right. I'm gonna try and explain it rationally and scientifically because it's not in this three-dimensional reality anyway. So how you're supposed to make it fit to this framework? Whoever tries,
maybe we can't even understand it. Maybe we don't have the capacity maybe to understand it.
Probably not.
Probably
right.
Not.
But we can describe it and we can experience it. And a lot of people's experiences, like over time and across culture, are very, very similar. So if you got a bunch of people across time, across culture talking about the same kind of thing in the same kind of ways, well, there's something there. Yeah. What it is, how it works, I don't know. Is there something there? Yep.
Nice. Okay, Ryan, last question. Sure. What do you want to be remembered for?
Man.
One thing, end of your life, what would you choose?
That I did my best to end human suffering.
That you did your best
To end
to
human
end
suffering.
human suffering. I like that. I
Been
like
through
that.
a lot. Yeah, I've been through a lot. Don't want anybody else to have to go through that if they don't have to.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Right, Ryan, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much for having me on, man. It's a blast.